geopolitics. Well, geopolitics, the race for AGI, and BitTensor. That's the name of this talk. All right. Okay, the golden age is upon us. As many of you guys are very fully aware, we've had a lot of fun in the Discord talking about all the cool things that are happening. So, one of them is the ability to create hip hop cows from DALL-E 2 and 3. We can have hip hop cows on demand. Artists are dead, thanks to AI. We can have 4chan edgelords on demand. Think of the limitless possibilities that we can create here. We could artist our ways to the moon. And our gamers are obsolete, guys. Obsolete. We can come out of our basements. We don't need to do it anymore ourselves. We can let the AIs play Dota for us, and we can build BitTensor miners instead. Certainly a golden age. The best part, of course, is that we'll be able to be catfished on Tinder very easily. On the right here, these are GAN-generated faces. It's truly incredible. And AI can just generate another human on the fly. So all this amazing stuff, that's why we're here. It's they call it the golden age of AI right now. And how did we get here? What happened? So, I'd like to say that we did better math. With the engineers at Google and Harvard and Stanford came up with better algorithms, but it's not true. We actually just ran all the dumb stuff way faster with more compute, more parameters, and more data. We just threw more compute at it. That's the bitter lesson of AI. We got the cow and the edgelord and the gamers just by running for a longer period of time on more data, and we did that at big time, huge magnitudes, scale and compute and data set size in parameters. These models are thousands of times larger than they were before, mostly because of the fact that we can train these models with new accelerators. We've thrown way more money at the problem, tens of thousands of GPUs to run single training epochs on training runs on new language models, for instance. But what are the ramifications of scaling everything in order to generate these hip hop cows? It's changed the game. AI is no longer this artisanal academic product, which Shib can probably talk to you about on this call. He did a PhD in machine learning, so he can tell you all about what those halls are like. This is where AI was birthed, Turing and Rosenblatt coming up with the core algorithms, for Princeton and Stanford. But it's no longer an academic thing. AI is an industry scale commodity that corporations throw billions and billions of dollars of compute at. Our company, our project alone, BitTensor is expending thousands and thousands of dollars of compute every day to train the neural internet. It's no longer a pet research project. And because of this, academia is sort of on the way out. The standard way in which we have trained and produced machine intelligence is dying, and what's being born is a new global industry market for machine intelligence. On the right here is this image showing the percentage of large-scale AI results coming from academia. So it's crashing like the Dow Jones today to zero. And that's because the academia doesn't have the compute, it doesn't have the economies of scale, doesn't have the scale to produce these new machine learning models that are just requiring so much compute. And only industry and nation states have that power. Another aspect here is that the field is moving so fast. There's so many engineers in AI that the number of archive papers being produced every day is way more than any of you could possibly read. Way more than I can possibly read, even if I could understand any of them. Here is I did this just today. This is June 5th archive papers with an ML tag, machine learning tag. This was the first 2 pages of archive papers for June 15th. Not only
not even all of the other journals like ACM, like IEEE and all that.
Exactly. This is just archive. This is just white papers of researchers around the world publishing papers on new techniques and new data sets and new approaches to artificial intelligence problems. So what does this all mean? This switch from academia to industry, like what are the effects? So we're moving from this beautiful building on the left to this underground warehouse on the right. And what does it mean? It means that AI is moving into this geopolitical phase. It's moved out of the academic world into the corporate world, into the big money world, and so far now that basically any large nation in the world has an AI strategy, an AI budget. Canada has hundreds of millions of dollars invested in a new AI center in downtown Toronto. The United States donated, is subsidizing tens of billions of dollars for its AI work. China, of course, is doing the same. It has a 3-year action plan for its AI work. The corporations are where this battle is playing out, but it is definitely something that is occurring at the nation state level. It matters who has these models and where these models are being trained because they're holding an immense value. We're in a new corporate political arms race for AI. It's no longer academic. It's a corporate political arms race. So let's recap. AI is moving incredibly fast. It's amazing. We got edgelords. This is all due because of dumb scaling, parameters, data sets, compute. We've killed, and this has killed the academic foundations of AI. It's killed the benchmark journal writing, going to conferences style of AI, and turned it into something that is akin to a global arms race, spearheaded by corporations like Google and OpenAI and Microsoft and Huawei and Baidu. So what's the problem with this direction we're going, this trajectory we're moving forward towards? Academics never really foresaw this. They never thought of ML as a commodity, and we didn't price it because of that. And until we have a price for machine intelligence, people will stop sharing it because there's no profit motive. And this is going to bring about a new form of mercantilism, a sort of closed economy AI. We're in this golden age. You might call it like an altruism age of AI, where OpenAI is letting you use DALL-E 2, and you can still get access to GPT-3. But this is ending. And when economies close, that signals the beginning of war. I'm not saying there's going to be war here. I'm just saying that the end of sharing is upon us because it's no longer an academic. It's no longer academically motivated. It's now corporate and politically motivated industry. And we're already kind of seeing this a little bit. Google is nervous about it. It's releasing Lambda. It's only invitation only. And I would say that I think that these companies are covering up the fact that they don't want to fully open source this technology by claiming that they're being careful about its use. But I think really we're slipping deeply into this new era of AI where it becomes a closed commodity. It becomes something that is held close to cards that are held close to the chest by these corporations because it has so much value. So what's the solution to this new mercantilism? As you guys know, I think that our thesis here is it's a new market. We need a new global market, open borders, open markets, free trade for machine intelligence. And that's what BitTensor is doing. Obviously, we're pricing machine intelligence so that we can build markets around it. And this is the answer to this switch from academia to a global industry. It needs to be priced, or else it's going to be held close to the chest. We want to restructure the technological arms race into a sharing economy, into a global AI economy, where these corporations, instead of holding it to themselves, are plugged into, our metagraph. Obviously, I should have put many of your photographs down here instead of these large corporations, but this is, I have Foundry on this image, which is obviously true today. We have one corporation who's beginning to mine into BitTensor, and so this in this talk was just speaking about how we've moved into this new economy and where BitTensor situates itself, and what problem it's solving by turning this commodity into a price asset. And we've only just begun. Here we are in 2022, the beginning of this new market. So thank you, everyone. I hope that was valuable.
Hey, can you hear me, Jake?
Yeah.
Awesome. It's being kind of weird. Yeah, I think that was kind of a very good presentation. The one question that we maybe should also get into is not just the global arms race with academia and with companies, but the global arms race between countries as well, right? Like you've got so many countries investing in AI now, Canada included, the US included, China included, and it's kind of almost going to be a who gets there first sort of thing because every single one of those countries has a superpower. With China's Baidu, Google's Face, the US is Google, DeepMind in London, in England, and so on, and like all these companies are almost kind of racing each other, but they're also kind of representing those countries as well. And in a
Yeah,
sense, it's almost becoming even more geopolitical than I think most people are comfortable with.
exactly. Unless we can build protocols to open up that machine intelligence, price it,
Yep,
and give access to people around the world.
exactly.
That's what we're working on here, really. We're building these markets. We're building a price for machine intelligence so that we can have open economies instead of a new mercantilism, essentially.
Yep, exactly.
Did anyone want to go over any parts of the slide deck? Did anyone have any questions or points? Feel free to jump in.
Can we look at more dolly cows?
Sorry,
Oh, did I interrupt somebody?
no, go ahead, Matt.
I said, can we look at more dolly cow images?
Uh-huh.
That's all.
Yes, I can post that in the chat. That image was incredible, wasn't it?
Yes.
If no one has a question about the slides, I got a question.
Yeah, please, Big Red.
Can you hear me well?
Yep.
So, with all the scaling that y'all are planning to do, I remember it was either last week or 2 weeks ago when you showed the model with I think the brain of like a rat or a mouse and showing the different areas that you're planning to branch into, whether it be image recognition or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume with that comes probably a huge amount of scaling. Is that correct?
Yes.
So to make that scaling possible, I know you just spoke of Foundry starting to invest. Are you, and is a team looking for a lot more power to come flowing into the system via some large players or like maybe large individual players?
Yes. I mean, we don't really care where it comes from.
Right.
But we want to build the incentives for it to come. Obviously, what really matters here is the market behind the token, because right now it's incredibly illiquid, as many of you are aware. Buying and selling Tau is just hard to do. You require an escrow, right? I mean, today actually, or perhaps this can happen next week. We probably will have our first escrow market through Etra's bot, but the push to actually run on a DEX, so a much more liquid market, will be very important to pulling in that additional compute because people can just find those margins very quickly between how much they're expending on compute and how much they're mining in BitTensor.
Okay, cool. That's kind of exactly what I was asking. Is like, I was kind of wondering if the marketing campaign and everything was focused around that a little bit, and if like a huge part of drawing in big investors is actually having a way to define like, hey, look, this is a rough estimation of the mining costs per Tau that you could incur and a rough estimation of what you could potentially sell it at later.
I see what you're saying. Like going to investors and actually describing to them what the cost benefits are for training on BitTensor.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think everyone in the community here is in agreement that we think that it's going to be worth a lot more, both monetarily and for other reasons than what we're putting into it. But as far as approaching investors, I mean, maybe some guys would be a little bit more stuck in just like a more of a rigid finance stance toward it.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem here because on one side we're building out the network, and so the value of the product is based on the size of the network, and that's why in all of our marketing and our messaging we push people towards running miners because that's the side that needs to be developed in order for us to really attract and provide value to, say, an AI company that is looking for another way to train its machine learning models or another way to access machine intelligence. So we're just really, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting very close. And I think that at least in the next year, we'll be able to exactly have that messaging for a company, for instance. You go to them and say, look, you can sell this product on BitTensor. You can also buy it, and this is what you'll be getting for what cost.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see the progression towards that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Big Red. Right. Following Big Red, anybody else have any questions or just comments? If you do have anything, you can also throw it into the general channel if you don't want to chime in. SBZ, pardon me. Good to see you on the call. We also have, when we're talking about geopolitical implications of BitTensor, we also have the Dubai connection through SBZ. Cheers as well. We were recently pitching part of the AI ministry in Dubai about working with us and mining on BitTensor. This is really exciting potential. Yeah, that was set up by SBZ. So huge thanks to him, and as well as Jay. Just waiting for some comments on the general channel here. Jay says, what's up, Jay? Hui says, could you provide some general guidelines about how much power a miner may need over the next 6 to 12 months? It's a great question, Hui, and I actually do not have the answer. I honestly think that you probably know the answer better than me because you've been mining here consistently on that side of the market since nearly the beginning. And but what I can say to that is that although we've taken a break from pushing up the computational costs, as you guys remember, at a certain point we were pushing the hyperparameters and increasing the sequence lengths, for instance. We stopped that because of the move to the larger UID size. We wanted to let the system kind of converge and reach an equilibrium before we would push any farther. But over the next 6 to 12 months, we will be increasing that. We want to get up to 1024. So we're only at 128. The push towards synapses will also increase the computational burden on miners because they'll have to do generation requests and other types of computational tasks, which are more difficult and expensive for your miners. So if you are running, say, a $5 machine, you might be kicked off pretty quick, or over the next 6 to 12 months. And that's something that we want to have, is we want to push people towards better compute. Trivial questions. Is the Tau logo always going to be the same? Like, is this a final rendition? Probably not the final rendition. This was just like a $200 digital artist contract that we asked them to build the Tau. We're probably going to stay with the Tau as the logo because it ties into other aspects of the project, obviously. So it's sort of nested, but we may improve it. And Huiz, is there any planned emphasis on GPUs? Yes, there's planned emphasis on compute which can service requests quickly, many. And by pushing the number of requests that are being sent and the sizes of those requests and the types of those requests with synapses, we will push towards GPUs likely. But if you can invent a neuromorphic chip that can do it faster, we're all ears. TPUs could work, Tegan. Absolutely. If you can get your hands on some TPUs, let us know. Can you expand on what Foundry is doing part of the network? Foundry is probably the first corporation that mines BitTensor. Foundry is the largest Bitcoin miner in the world. I think they have like 30 or something % of the hash rate on Bitcoin, and they have a dedicated team to mining BitTensor as well. So they're miners. They're not coding anything for us. Occasionally, they do help us with some technical things, and they're releasing a new registration, Rust implementation soon. They've been very useful to us. Goat says, yeah, seems like BitTensor is going for a clean, simple Apple-like branding, if I'm correct. Yeah, that was the design we went to, sort of black and white with sparse colors and making the colors pop when we use them. Let us know if you like that. Perhaps it's not quite as beautiful as others attempts, but that's what we have. We're also working with the branding agency currently. Hui says, tell us about new registration. Sure. Okay. So the thing about the POW is that our goal is to make that something that is just computationally expensive and is a measure of how much compute you're putting into the system, so you can effectively purchase yourself a slot. So we're Sybil resistant and so that anybody can get in if they just have a computer. We wrote the first rendition of the proof of work in Python in November of 2021, and it is not incredibly fast. We intend to make it better so that if there are people that are innovating on this side of BitTensor, that just the layman can come in and can compete with their scale of technology in terms of the proof of work. We think that probably people are already hacking it and building C++ implementations of the POW, which would be somewhat faster. So we're releasing a Rust version so that the community baseline is just higher for most people. So I think the new implementation is about 3 or 4 times faster than a standard Python implementation. Terrence digs it. That's great. I'm glad you dig it. Thanks, Novus.
Hey, Const, shall I just mention a few things about the event in London and about the Twitch idea?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So, folks, coming up in just under 2 weeks' time, if anybody is in the UK or specifically in London, sorry, there's somebody mowing the grass behind me. It's a little noisy. I'm going to be speaking about BitTensor at an event that's being hosted at the Microsoft Reactor in London, which is like a incubator stroke co-working type space that Microsoft have. So I'm going to be speaking there about BitTensor. So keep your eyes peeled if you're in London and want to come along to that, because I'll be announcing some details soon. And then the other thing is we're going to start streaming on Twitch as well. So in the past, I've done a lot of Twitch streaming about kind of like live coding and tutorials and stuff. And one of the things we might do is move these events that we do here on a Thursday onto Twitch. And the reason for that being is it opens it up to a slightly wider audience that maybe don't want to necessarily come and join on Discord, because you can actually just view them without needing a login at all, and they're automatically recorded and then they're available for people. And we can also then republish onto YouTube as well. But we'll make the announcement in here. The other good thing is that the quality of the streaming and screen sharing is a bit higher than on Discord as well. So especially if you're trying to kind of see text or whatever, it's a little bit better in that regards. But there's still the interactive chat there, and we'll still be able to take questions and chat through Discord, as well as bringing voices in from Discord. So if there's people who want to talk who are in here, they'll still be able to talk on the Twitch chat as well. So yeah, that's that.
Wood, thank you, Matt. I really wish I could make it to that Microsoft event. I recommend everyone tries their best to get out there.
It's gonna be recorded as well, so we will be able to publish it afterwards. They've got a full recording set up there, so yeah, it's going to be recorded and published afterwards as well.
Is it free?
Yes, it is free. It's being run in conjunction between ourselves, Microsoft, Filecoin, who develop IPFS that we use for the storage of our training data, and also there'll be a speaker from the Web3 London meetup as well, probably talking about sort of general Web3 type stuff. So it's going to be published by the Web3 London community as well as Microsoft, and probably streamed live as well, I believe. So just keep an eye out. I'll publish the details and announcement in here.
Great. Well, if it's funded by the Protocol Labs, then there'll probably be some pretty good food around.
Yeah, they're going to be paying for the beer and pizza, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Hui says, so right now you need way more power to register than you actually need to mine. How will this due process affect that ratio? Is there a projected timeline for when other participants? That ratio is affected by the demand to get in the network versus the demand to perform well in it. So if and how those things relate to computational burden. So if it matters way more to it matters way more having proof of work power than having serving power, for instance, then that will obviously be worth some ratio of the demand to get in the network versus how much you're going to get if you stay in with that type of power. So it's a little hard to calculate that out, but effectively it comes down to that supply and demand. How many people are trying to get in the network versus and that will be affected by the demand to get in the network, which is how much they'll make when they get in. The ratio is hard to say. The thing about the POW is that it's scalable, right? It doesn't matter how many computers you're running across, you can just scale it horizontally as much as you want. And I think we've already seen that happen a lot with registrations. People are actually throwing a lot of compute at just getting a single miner. And the second question was, is there a projected timeline for the rolling out of inferences? July, end of July, we hope to have the beginnings of the inference sentence protocol coming into Nakamoto. We're testing on Nobunaga. We have our devs working on that all throughout the week, making sure that it's coming together and working effectively, right? So we don't want to overly rush it because it's going to affect the incentive mechanism drastically. We want to understand how that's going to affect and do this properly. But yeah, as I said, end of July. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Hui. Thank you for the questions. Mike, yeah, I think so. Probably an open channel will be great as well. Yes, we do know how it will affect the incentive mechanism. So what the Synapse protocol, what I assume you're referring to when you say inferences, will require that the miners are capable of doing not just embedding requests. So the responses will be more than embeddings. This is going to be probably a longer conversation. We could potentially have a whole TGIF on it. But the one thing that does change is the fact that the validators are testing not just the collaborative value of a miner, but also its individual value to solving a loss. So historically, or actually still to this day, the embeddings are joined using a mixture layer. So we take them out of the network and we combine them and we learn a combination that's valuable. And then we use an information theoretic salience method to determine their value to the validator. And that's how we score them. We will be doing that in conjunction with taking the outputs and actually passing them directly into a loss function. So we'll see how well your outputs are actually solving the problem altogether, not in conjunction with the other miners in the system. So this is sort of like an individual scoring for the miner, which is slightly different because it will add more weight to computers which are just better in themselves rather than specifically unique. Eugene says, yeah, more information to come. I think this one's going to be a whole conversation. Are the big investors, Foundry example, planning to buy Tau upfront to stake their own miners? They have done that already. So Foundry, DCG, and Polychain did purchase a large portion of Tau the beginning of this year. We just finalized those contracts with them, so that's great. Those funds are in the foundation, which is the not-for-profit that funds the development of BitTensor. Will validators always get half emissions? Do you see that changing in the future? I don't think that we will change it anytime soon. Frankly, it was an arbitrary number, but perhaps this is something that we could change in the future with the DAO. But we'd have to be careful about how that plays out because it could affect, perhaps people will just simply vote to increase or decrease validator scores for self-interest rather than the interest of the protocol itself. So Terrence says, do dividends go up or down for validators? They'll stay the same, but the burden on validators will go up in terms of computation. So they'll be working harder, and that will put into some baseline, no doubt, for the validators. There will also be probably a higher consensus around the better peers because the validations will be more accurate. I think that's one of the biggest pushes will be the accuracy of the validators and their performance. So validators that are underperforming or doing a bad job of selecting winning miners will do worse, if that makes sense, Terrence. Zora says, when Playground, Caro can talk about this perhaps if he's on the call, but it's not going to be until after the release of Synapses at the end of July. Caro, you want to talk on that?
Yeah. So first off, Synapses are going to really change the game for how being able to utilize the BitTensor network as a client. You'll be able to control a lot of the variables that you can do in the OpenAI playground. So for the playground development, the timeline that it's looking at right now is probably about 2-ish weeks after its deployment on Nobunaga, the BitTensor network. So when that's up, then we will have, I'll create some demonstration models on the network showing off Playground, but it'll definitely be in beta. So be expecting this for at least for the Nobunaga test, somewhere in between the middle of July to the end of July, along with probably the main net release. So
Thanks, Graham. Are you able to share how much Tau Foundry bought and for how much? No. I'd have to probably ask them.
There are very strict laws and regulations that prevents us from speaking about
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll sidestep that. I'll sidestep that question. Yeah. I'll sidestep that conversation because I don't know what trouble I would get in. But I'll just say it was the right price and it was a fair amount.
No, it was too low, Jake. It was too low.
It was too low and it was not very much. It'll probably be knowledge at a certain point. But effectively, Polychain and DCG, as well as FirstMark Capital, took a good chunk from the tokens that we mined. So, as you guys know, we did a fair launch, right? So everything was funded by mining development, primarily by Shib and me, Taco, potentially some from Caro, to fund their raise and pay the developers behind the scenes. But hopefully, at a certain point, there will be no contracts, and the foundation will be just funding itself through the open market. That's the vision for the foundation. And we'll be able to scale somewhat more. Great. Okay, I don't see anyone type. Okay, there. Ways type. Trying to be as candid and political as possible. If you want, you could probably ask them. We would be fine if they said. Thanks, Zoro. Appreciate you coming.
Howdy, I'm back. What did I miss?
Everything.
Apparently. Sorry about that. Wait, what happened to Const?
Right here.
Okay, I missed you completely. Sorry. Sorry. Dealing with a lot of bureaucratic crap as usual. You know me?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. That's all me.
Yes, of course. And I believe you were probably just drinking rum.
I mean, of course. All I do.
Yeah. Why is the rum always gone?
Exactly.
Great. Well, I think we answered a lot of questions there. So unless there are any more, feel free to put in the general chat. Obviously, we'll try possible, or maybe keep it until next TGIF. Thanks for coming, everyone.
no, thank you.
Have a good one. I really enjoyed this talk. Thank you. This was so much fun.
It was.
Soon,
Ciao.
soon, BitTensor will be the size of nations.
Exactly. There will be only inter-BitTensor warfare.
Yes.
Okay. Ciao, everyone.
Fantastic. Ciao.
Thank you.